start of voting stations were only received in a few wards in the Eastern Cape, including some voting districts in Ward 16 in Tabankulu and some voting districts in Ward 8 in Amatol. Our security forces have been deployed to ensure that voting could start as soon as possible in all these areas that we've identified that we have seen some trouble. Delays to voting were also reported in a small percentage of voting stations due to a variety of circumstances, including weather such as tents being blown overnight due to high winds, and in the areas such as in the Free State in Kwakwa, the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro in the Eastern Cape, and in some cases, late arrival of electoral staff with voting materials in a few voting stations. And these were partly caused by factors such as motor vehicle accidents that involve our electoral staff and that were injured or vehicles were damaged, but in some cases it was there were no serious injuries reported. Sadly, and the voting had to be interrupted in respect for the unfortunate passing away of a voter in a voting station in the Northern Cape in a place called Stradenberg. However, the police are working with our electoral staff to assist in attending to the situation so that then voting can proceed. Further, the Electoral Commission is also pleased to note that the weather, contrary to what was expected, relatively is mild in many parts of the country and has not adversely affected the voting as was anticipated. And we hope that stays the same way throughout the day. Voting will continue throughout the day until 7 p.m. tonight when voting stations close. However, we want you to note that the voters who are within the voting stations or in the queues at 7 o'clock will still be allowed to continue to vote. And voters are reminded that they must vote only where they are registered, and they can check their voting station details by dialing their ID numbers 32810, and as well as contacting our call center that's been open since this morning, 0800 11 800. I'll repeat the number, 0800 11 8000. And further, voters must have their ID documents with them, and we also remind that each ballot paper that they receive, they must ensure that it has been stamped on the reverse side because unstamped ballot papers will not be counted. Please, we remind the voters that they must also verify that they have received stamped ballot papers before they go and cast their vote. The Electoral Commission did receive some reports of isolated cases where voters had been stopped from entering the voting station by the electoral personnel and in some cases by the police officers for wearing their political party regalia. Wearing of such clothing by voters is not prohibited. It is only prohibited for party agents and candidates that they cannot wear party clothing inside the voting station. And this information is made clear in the do's and don'ts posters that are provided in each voting station. Any voter who is prevented from entering a voting station due to their clothing should immediately report this to our call center, as I've indicated, 0800 11 8000, or to the area manager for that voting station. The cell phone numbers of area managers are posted at each voting station. The Electoral Commission would also like to remind all employers, especially those who are in the agriculture, retail, transport, mining, and many other sectors that are operating on continuous basis, that today has been declared a public holiday. I would like to repeat, today has been declared a public holiday in order to allow that all South Africans can exercise their constitutional right to vote. It is illegal to prevent any voter from exercising that particular right. So we wish to remind all employers that they must release their employees so that they can go and vote. South Africans, today we're celebrating our democracy. We urge you all to come out in your large numbers and celebrate our democracy and cast your vote in our local government elections, because your future is in your hands. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Chairperson of the IEC, Glenn Mashinini. I'm going to open the floor for questions, for matters of clarity. If I can have my colleagues to assist me with the mic. If I can, may I also request anyone asking the question to please stand up. The camera crews have requested for that. Can I please have the microphones this side? And let's start at the side. Let's start that way. The statement is circulating for reference.
Hi, Ahmed from News 24. You've mentioned something about a Northern Cape man who passed away at a voting station. Could you please provide more clarity on how that happened? Was it old age? Was he shot? What happened exactly there? And also, you spoke very generally about some of the issues at the voting stations. I just wanted to know if you could possibly provide more clarity on some situations, like there being no ballot box seals in Hammanskraal, and apparently some IEC staff got the voters rolled in Roseville, in Pretoria, and in Kensington, in Joburg. Thanks.
All right. You got the second question, CEO? Okay. Let's move here. Can I get people who are on the floor just to assist with sequencing of questions? Thank you.
My name is Tsepo Ikane from the South African Broadcasting Corporation. Are you able to provide us with details about the status of voting at Vuwani? The last time we checked from our colleagues there is that some of your staff were still locked outside of the voting station. And again, in Blouberg, in Limpopo, it's reported that some community members have locked up their school and there's no voting taking place. Do you have that kind of a report? Thanks.
Thank you. Next question, please.
Hi, Faith Daniels from Kagiso Media. I just need clarity on the campaigning rules at this time, because we do have some people saying that there's active campaigning still happening in the queues. And then can you also just clarify the SMSs sent out by political parties, whether that is still allowed, because people are still getting that? Thanks.
All righty. Okay, let me take the question in front.
Buntu Williams from N97. Just a quick one. On arrival here, we noticed that there was a table where the election of observers sit for the parties. and there was one attributed to the NFP, which I thought was barred from participating in these elections. And there was a gentleman from the PAC who did not have a table, but I thought they had won their case in court to participate in the elections. Some clarity there, please.
All right. CEO, you got it, or must we get a repeat? CEO, you got the question? All right. I'm seeing quite a few hands. I've got already 5 questions with me. I wanted just to allow the panel, so that we don't bulk too many questions, just write it down. I'm going to first attend to this first series of questions, and then the hands that are up currently, I'm going to take it as the second block of questions. Let me get these 5 questions to be responded to, and then we'll get to the next block of questions, so that we manage this process properly.
Good morning. There are a number of questions that you have raised. Let's attempt to deal with them. Ahmed from News 24, person who died in the Northern Cape and how they died. We understand this may have been a death that results from natural causes, but clearly our staff are not medically trained. It's not a situation, as we understand, that was extraordinary, other than, the sadness of her death. We have given you a breakdown of the categories of delays. You want specifics. We are not able to deal with specifics at this level in the sense that you want, because you would require us to tabulate them, and we have the specifics at every one of the provincial offices. We do in fact share those specifics with the party liaison committee, but for purposes of a briefing, we think it is useful to categorize them in the broad groupings provided to you. Where you find there might have been an extraordinary situation that we have missed, it does not take away from the groupings that we have provided. We seek through these media conferences to really give you, update on these elections to the best of our ability, so that you have the information, at your fingertips, and the granularity we can always deal with at a local level. Tsepo, you raised the question about Vuani specifically. We had 2 challenges in Limpopo, which affected Vembe District, Blouberg, and Mopani. We did not have telephone lines for most parts of those areas, and our contact was very poor. But all of our stations were reported open because other means of communications were used. We also had the good news that in a number of those stations we had queues. Yes, there were stations that were open and not much activity, but that was early when we received that report. We are pleased with it though. Work will happen. We are ready in those areas. Our colleagues are in place. The equipment, the stations are open, and all is well. We did not have adverse reports in that respect. The issues that you're raising in Blouberg, there were isolated instances that were reported to us. They were dealt with in this morning. We are going to continue to look at that situation. Of course, it's not because we do not have people and equipment. We understand that there are community issues, and we will be assisted by leaders in those communities, by members of the security forces, but we also engage with those communities, and we should deal with those situations. And we hope that voters will have the opportunity to cast this very special vote in these elections. There was a question raised about campaigning rules. We tried to deal with this question extensively even last night. It refuses to go away. There is not going to be any political meetings taking place today. The law is clear. Campaigning, low forms of campaigning happen. They are not excluded from the categories or from campaigning as we see it, political meetings or gatherings. But that cannot happen within the vicinity of the voting stations. In the media release that we issued last night, we actually made 2 paragraphs there that specifically indicated that the forms of political activity that are not allowed were specified. And generally, there is not going to be a rally, political meetings and things taking place. Those are not allowed. But reminding a voter and that and the other things where it's not general meetings will happen. PAC and NFP tables. We have dealt with the matter. There is no confusion at all. The NFP remains a party represented in the national sphere of government, and they will have a table as they ought to have. There is also a table for the PAC. We have dealt with the matter with the representative of the PAC present here when we had the meeting there. What has happened was the printing with the logo that was being attended to. The table exists, it is there. They are not excluded, and there is no confusion at all. They are a party in good standing, they are contesting these elections, and they have facilities just like any other party has. I thank you very much for this round of questions.
Thank you so much, Chief Electoral Officer. Let me take the second round of questions. Where are we starting? With that side, and then we're going that way. Thank you very much.
Yusuf Abramji, a freelancer. Some areas in Lenasia are apparently out of ballot papers and voters are being turned away. What is being done in areas where there are no ballot papers, and why is there a shortage of ballot papers? And secondly, reports on social media say scanners are not working at many polling stations. What is being done about the use of technology? Thank you.
Okay. You don't have a particular area in Lens? Okay. If you can provide us with some of the details.
Good morning, and thank you for taking my question.
Yes.
It's Bonolo from the New Age. With regards to the cautioning employers, against, not allowing their employees to go out and vote. Earlier this morning, we have received reports, especially in the farming sector, that some employees have not been allowed.
Can you please raise your voice a little bit, Bonolo?
Sure. Some employees have not been allowed to vote this morning. So I just wanted to ask, what recourse would employees have in such events, and how far can the IEC intervene on this particular matter? Thank you.
Thank you.
Rorisang Khosana from Pretoria Record. We received, you mentioned that there's a small percentage of voting stations that were delayed this morning. And we heard
Sorry, Mama, can you please start all over again? We don't want to miss you.
Okay. Rorisang Khosana from Pretoria Record. Earlier you mentioned there was a small percentage of voting stations that were delayed. We received reports of Sunnyside and Acacia Primary School. So is it safe to say that everything is smooth now, they're all open and everyone can vote? And does that mean that they will still close at 7 o'clock tonight?
Okay.
Hello, I'm Cecilia Russell.
Cecilia, please stand up. I need to see you.
Okay,
I need to see you. Thank you.
I'm Cecilia Russell from ANN7.
Put your mic up. Thank you.
Could you give us an idea of voting turnout so far and voting turnout from special votes yesterday and the day before? Thanks.
Thanks, Cecilia. Let me take the last one.
Sorry. Thulasizwe Simelane from eNCA. 2 quick questions. One is linked to the one asked by Yusuf Abramji about things that really chairperson and commissioners should have been in place before election day. I personally don't understand how polling stations such as Jubilee here in Pretoria, Jubilee Park, didn't have the voters' roll didn't have, the ballot papers. They had to go fetch from Centurion, those kind of things, while people waited outside. We thought you had said you were ready to go with these things. Why were they not there in the morning? And then secondly, please confirm for me if you have expelled more IEC staff, particularly in Durban, in the Durban area, and what was the reason behind that? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let me take the last question from the corner. Do I have two? All right, two last ones, then we can wrap up this round. Thank you very much.
From Azhar Vari from Salam Media, just to add to what Yusuf Abramji said there, I think the voting station is referring to is MHJ Secondary School in Ward 9, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. There's a report of no ballot papers there.
All right, thank you so much for the clarity.
Lerato Matlala from the SABC. I just wanted to find out about the IEC officials, the reports about IEC officials that have been dismissed in Durban. I just want to find out how many and what's going to happen. Are people going to be able to vote?
Thank you so much. Between the commissioners and the IEC and the chief electoral officer, if we can just clarify some of the issues.
Yusuf, let me start with you. We had a discussion with the PLC, and we're talking to our staff. There will not be a shortage of ballot papers in these elections. It will not be. There are sufficient ballots that are out there. We need to just deal with a case where isolated instances of an area manager or presiding officer who have ballots may have placed them in places where they're not accessing them. I want to say to the nation, we will not have shortages of ballot papers. But let me also say this to you. The sad part is that we have had hoax messages of ballot papers running short. And I want to ask that we all deal with these matters responsibly. In those instances where our colleagues, on the nervousness of managing the logistics in their areas, have kept some ballots as a reserve with a roving area manager, we will deal with that situation. But we want to call on all voters to know that there is no shortage of ballot papers. MHJ or that situation, my colleagues have in fact left here to just be sure. But I'm saying generally South Africans must know there is not a shortage, and let's not send hoax messages. Voters will be provided with the correct ballots in every area where voting has to take place. Scanners, same problem. Scanners we use for two purposes. One is to harvest data so that we can serve you better. We are not registering voters in these elections. We are using those scanners to look at the turnout of voters and to corroborate the amount of voters that have come for research purposes. We mustn't panic when those scanners don't work. We also use them for locating persons on the voters' roll. And this is what I need to also clarify. We have checked this morning. In very, very high number of voting stations, everything was running well. When we say we are ready, and I think Tula Sizwe, I come to you. When we say we are ready, we are determined, and we show that work has been done in a logistical exercise of this magnitude of 22,612 voting stations that must all open in time. There will be, even if it's 0.001%, that will happen. Measure us in terms of how we respond to it, and we deal with those instances. Of course, we want everything to go well, but everyone that deals with an election will tell you this is a question of scale, and we will manage that issue to the best of our ability. We are all very determined to get everything running as it should, despite whatever nature of the problem that we would face out there. And that's what readiness means. Determination, it does not mean the absence of challenges. Sunnyside, Acacia, those places, they have been identified earlier on. They were dealt with. I must admit, I have been fairly busy for most of this morning. I know that all of the areas that have been identified, you would have seen us report the opening of voting stations, and by implications, dealing with the exceptions as well. In other words, those that are not open, we have the ability to pick them up and then to deal with them accordingly. In every one of those stations that have been affected, measures will be taken. Where staff need to be increased to deal with the queues, we will deal with that. Where it was a question of a voter's role, as Tula Sizwe has indicated, we'll deal with that. But we will deal with appropriate measures to meet the problem that we face in every station. It's not a generic situation, it's a specialized situation, and we'll deal with the challenge that we face. Staff that were dismissed, voting turnout so far. We do not keep a running tally for general publication. It is kept at the stations by the presiding officers in those instances where regularly they will give us a turnout, and we will deal with it. But most of it is going to be later in the day today when we deal with it. Voters that have voted in special votes, the reconciliation of the voters that have been voting in special votes will be taking place this afternoon or early when the stations closed today. We'll be reconciling those voters that have voted against the special voting application as well as against the voters' roll. And at that point, we may be able to then deal with the issue of turnout in general. Staff dismissed in KwaZulu-Natal, in Durban. When you say Durban, you're talking about the specific instances in the city of eThekwini. If I'm not mistaken, and I don't have the granular details, our colleagues do have details, and we can provide them also hereafter. There were two instances that I remember where we have relieved people of their responsibility. In the one instance, it was the presiding officer and the deputy presiding officer. In another instance, it was the presiding officer only. That instance of the presiding officer only is being dealt with the police and ourselves. And those are the details that we will share at the moment. Voting in all instances, in both instances, is not affected. We have replaced those people. We are dealing with voting as we need to, and there is no further incident to report on that score. Thank you very much. Sorry. Oh yeah, I'm reminded that the issue of farmers and places where persons are not allowed to vote. Look, I think the fact that election day is declared a public holiday is to free persons that may not be or would not otherwise have been in a position to do so. I do not know the specific instances. They may well be, they may not be. Our call, it was made clear in the media statement by the chairperson. We are asking all employers, whether they be retailers, whether they be farmers, whether they be the media, whether they be anyone, to please release people to go out. We understand also that arrangements can be made between employers and employees. The Electoral Commission is a good example. We are all working here today, but we've made arrangements with colleagues, and we would like everybody to make those arrangements. We are not in the position to comment about generic instances, but I'm just saying there are special votes. There may be persons who have applied for special votes because they knew that on a day like this, they would be working. People in essential services and other places. But generally, the call we are making as the Electoral Commission is people must be given an opportunity to vote in these elections. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. This brings to a close this morning's press briefing. Any other issue, we'll deal with them as the day progresses. We'll definitely post a schedule of the next press briefing. In the meantime, let us keep in touch. But our biggest appeal, because of the magnitude of the work today, one-on-ones might not be easy. Whenever we have a press briefing, let us get as much information as possible. We'll try and assist where we can. But let us keep the good work going. Thank you so much for your support. Later.
Ha ha ha.